Well, hey, good evening. I'm very glad that you're here, and I know that on a Sunday, typically I'll speak, and of course Andrew speaks sometimes, but we got a great surprise for you, and if you're a woman, you've already heard the cat got out of the bag. I'm a little upset at somebody for telling that this was happening, even though I'm married to that person, but my wife is speaking tonight, and I would love for you to give her a warm welcome as she comes up. So this is Heather, and she'll do a great job. Anyway, she's awesome.
Good evening. Well, it's been almost a whole year since I stood in front of you last year at Mother's Day. So last time I made a confession for you that I am a little bit of a germaphobe, and this time I have another confession for you. So for those of you who don't really know me, you are formulating quite an odd opinion of me. I do get that. But here we go. So this time my confession for you is that I love all things vintage. If you were to come to my house and look at my style of what I've got going on, I've got a mix of eclectic things, and a lot of them happen to be vintage things. And I happen to really love particularly dishes and linens, and where other people see chips and a project, I see a story. I look at it and wonder, how did that chip happen? Who got in trouble for that? What little kid, his mom really laid into him for that one? I love all things old. Possibly, I would not want an old couch. I would love old furniture, but I don't like the idea of the overstuffed chairs and what could be, whatever. So that goes back to the germaphobe thing. But I also happen to love wrinkles. I don't know how to say this other than just to say this, but I really love old people. I know. The wrinkle part, you can get that I love old people. You understand that, but you don't understand why I love wrinkles. And I have loved wrinkles since I was a tiny child. I would look at people's foreheads with the lines there, and I would think, oh, yay, someday I get those. Or these smile lines, and I really love them on my husband, or these right here. And I was looking forward to getting them. So now I have to admit that now that I'm getting them, I don't really love them as much as I thought I might, but I still really love them on all of you. I just don't like them on myself. I know that makes me a hypocrite. So as endearing and as much as I love, the word old coming from me is love. I do understand two things about the word old. First is that nobody really wants to be called old, right? It doesn't feel good so much to the heart. The second thing is that old is a term that is very relative. If we're talking technology, if you have a phone that is 2 years old, your phone is super duper old, and it's time to get a new one because technology moves so quickly. If I say that my jeans are old, it might mean that they're just a couple of years old and the style is a little bit outdated. Right? But you might ask somebody else, and they might say their jeans are old, but that means that they have been wearing them for 50 years out in the garden, and they were like genuine Levi's and dungarees, right? Old is a term that is relative. So for today, we're going to use the term older and younger, because all at once, I am older and I am younger. And I just realized, I'm sorry, Stella wanted to come in here, but she was, just excuse us, we got some parent business here. But she was trying to be nice to Hudson and make him happy in class, but she wanted to come hear her mom speak. Isn't that sweet? So will you go get Stella? Thank you. All right, excuse us, I'm sorry. We're all family, so it's good, right? Anyway, so I am all at once older and younger. Other than two people in here, whoever the oldest person or the youngest person happens to be, you can say that, right? Because I am older than so-and-so, but I am younger than so-and-so. So we happen to be a church full of people who are older and younger. And this is my very favorite thing about our church. When you come to an event, if you come to a worship service, we see many, many generations and the span of many ages. And this isn't true of all churches. So I love that about our church. But I happen to know that some of you may also love it and think that's your favorite part of the Grove Church. But it also might be something that kind of frustrates you, because with the older and younger comes some challenges of different age cultures, correct? And then the others of you might fall into a third category where you've never even given this any thought. You just come to church and you love it, but you've never thought about how different, possibly unique this is that we have a church full of older and younger. But how do we navigate those challenges that come with different age cultures? That's what we're going to tackle today, of being older and younger. And we're going to read in 2 Samuel 19, and it's a story of David. And we pick up the story where David he is just grieving for his son Absalom. Absalom made a play for his throne, and he has been the king for a little while. But David, through all the battles with his men, Absalom died at some point there, and David is grieving him. But all these people have come to the Jordan River to escort him back to Jerusalem to claim his throne again. And that is where we pick up our story. So 2 Samuel 19:31. Barzillai the Gileadite also came down from Roglim to cross the Jordan with the king and send him on his way from there. Now Barzillai was very old, 80 years of age. Do you like that? Very old? That's kind of mean, huh? That's like putting salt in the wound. But anyway, all right. He had provided for the king during his stay in Mahanaim, for he was a very wealthy man. The king said to Barzillai, "Cross over with me and stay with me in Jerusalem, and I will provide for you." But Barzillai answered the king, "How many more years will I live that I should go up to Jerusalem with the king? I am now 80 years old. Can I tell the difference between what is enjoyable and what is not? Can your servant taste what he eats and drinks? Can I still hear the voices of male and female singers? Why should your servant be an added burden to my lord the king? Your servant will cross over the Jordan with the king for a short distance, but why should the king reward me in this way? Let your servant return that I may die in my own town near the tomb of my father and mother. But here is your servant, Kimham. Let him cross over with my lord the king. Do for him whatever you wish." The king said, "Kimham shall cross over with me, and I will do for him whatever you wish. And anything you desire from me, I will do for you." So all the people crossed the Jordan, and then the king crossed over. The king kissed Barzillai and bid him farewell. And Barzillai returned to his home. When the king crossed over to Gilgal, Kimham crossed with him. All the troops of Judah and half the troops of Israel had taken the king over. Tucked in between all this fighting and trickery on both sides of this story, this little story of Barzillai and David is refreshing, and it's packed full of how to navigate this older and younger lessons. So let's take, first of all, Barzillai, the older, his lessons. First of all, he took an active part in David's battle back for his throne, for as long as he could, in whatever way he could. 2 Samuel 17 tells us a little more detail, and it says this: When David came to Mahanaim, Shobi, son of Nahash from Reba of the Ammonites, and Maker, son of Amiel from Lo-Debar, and Barzillai the Gileadite from Roglim, brought bedding and bowls and articles of pottery. They also brought wheat and barley, flour and roasted grain, beans and lentils, honey and curd, sheep and cheese from cow's milk for David and his people to eat. For they said, "The people have become exhausted and hungry and thirsty in the wilderness." This is just like my grandma, just like a cute little Italian grandma not that she was Italian, I'm just saying here, it's the picture that I have in my mind of an Italian grandma who is always trying to feed, right? Let me nourish you. Let me make sure that you've had enough sleep. That is the concern of family members when they love their young ones. They want to make sure you've eaten and that you're sleeping, and then always, oddly enough, that you wear a coat, right? My grandma always wanted to know why I didn't have my coat with me. Anyway, so he took an active part for as long as he could in whatever way he could. Number 2, he freely admitted old age and frailty. He says, I can't taste anymore. I can't even tell the difference between male and female voices. In a culture where we are taught to deny our age, to never admit how old you are, to dye our hair and cover up our wrinkles, in a culture that doesn't want to have anything to do with aging, right? This is refreshing to me. He doesn't say it as a guilt trip of, I'm old, and so now you owe me. He doesn't say it with bitterness in his heart of frustration. He just states these things. This is what I'm old, and I've got these frailties. And he wants to continue to be a part. He says, I'll cross with you over a while with you, but then I'm going to go home. He doesn't want in any way to be a burden. He admits these frailties, and he's saying, okay, but I don't want that to be a burden to you. And I think that that's a hard thing to do for the older of any age. It's hard for us parents to step back sometimes and let our children go on without the burden of their parents along with them. That's hard to step back and say, okay, in this situation, I'm going to be a burden. I'm going to be a hindrance. Nobody wants to admit that when they want to be a part of it. And yet, he just is honest here. He loves David and he wants the best for him. He also is concerned for his family. He says, okay, don't bless me. Don't take care of me. I'm good. But I would take delight if you would bless my sons. So Kimham does go with him. All right, David the younger, what lessons can we learn from him? David clearly had true affection and concern for Barzillai. This went beyond just a kindness and a gratefulness for what Barzillai had done, because there were other people in that story making provisions, but we don't ever hear of them again. There's some sort of connection and special relationship between these two guys that has bonded them, that now David wants to go above and beyond. What can I do to serve you? How can I bless you? And Barzillai says, you can do for my son what you want, what you wish. And he says, no. What do you wish for your son? Because that's what I'm going to do. Whatever you wish, I will take care of them. The second thing David does is he gives Barzillai respect. He doesn't automatically count him out because of his age. He says, come along with me. Be a part of this. He gives him the option of being a part of it. We can so easily maybe count people out because they have disadvantages, because of their age, whatever it may be. We may automatically make assumptions that we don't give people the dignity of the choice. And David didn't do that. David also kept his devotion and promise to Barzillai. We read in 1 Kings 2:7, be kind to the sons of Barzillai of Gilead. Make them permanent guests at your table, for they took care of me when I fled from your brother Absalom. This is on David's deathbed. This is one of his last thoughts. He's dying, and one of his last thoughts is for Barzillai. Take care of him. I made a promise, and I want to make sure we keep that. And he says to his sons, not just the one son that he promised to take care of, but now he's expanded it to the sons. For all we know, he could have had 500 sons. We don't know. This was biblical times, right? They had lots of kids. And he says, make them a permanent guest at your table. It's going beyond and above just his promise even, because he loves, clearly has this great affection for Barzillai. He wants to take care of him. And that could never have happened without relationship. If we do not have true relationship with people, then all we are is coexisting under one roof. It becomes cold, it becomes businesslike, it becomes just civil. It becomes just, what are the common kindnesses? But when you have relationship, it's no. What can I possibly do to serve you? How can I just make your world full of joy? How can I make delight in your hearts? What can I do to serve you? But that only happens because they have a genuine affection and relationship with each other. And for so many here at the Grove Church, you are doing this older and younger so very right. And it makes me unequally, unbearably, whatever, so happy. Because we are doing this right. I see the relationship between the older and the younger happening. But I also know that it brings challenges, and it causes different people to have to give up things that they love, and that can be hard. And so some would say, why are we doing it this way? This is the hard way. If you go to the churches within, 10 minutes of our church, 25 other churches, I'm going to tell you that you're going to find probably 2 different models, not like ours. And one is that a church might have a largely one-sided age, whether it's older or younger, but you're not going to see many of the other. And that comes because we have a history of church where we've done things one way. And so for so many congregations, they've said, we're not going to change. We're going to keep on doing church the good old way, the way we've always done it. And we're going to let the young people figure it out on their own. So in reaction to that, then all these young people who have run away from that model of church in droves have reacted with their own version of the same thing and said, we're going to do church our way, the way we like it, young and edgy and hip. So that's one model where you have one age group, young or old. And if you go to many churches in our area, you will see that. You'll walk in and see only white and gray hair, or you'll walk in and only see young college people. So then the other model, and this, in my opinion, is not much different. But that is where a church, within a church, they share a church building, but there are 2 different services, either happening at the same time or happening one right after the other. A traditional is usually what it's called, and then a contemporary worship service. And in my opinion, that's not much different because it is two different congregations who don't intermingle, who don't mix together, because they're separate. They share a church building, they share a pastor, but heaven forbid they ever share worship together. Those are the models. And does this solve some of our problems, our difficulties of age culture? Absolutely. It could be an easy way to solve that. I get that. But I have to say that with every single fiber in my being, that does not feel like the healthiest picture of church to me. And it's not judgment on people who are doing it differently. I'm just answering for us here, right here, for this church. That does not feel like the healthiest picture, because without the mix of generations, you miss out on the richness of the strengths of each of those generations. If you separate them, then you miss out on that genuine affection that comes with knowing each other. And therefore, the edges, the hard, rough edges of the older and the younger is all we can see about each other, because we don't know each other to go beyond any of that. If you don't hear anything else from me tonight, if this is all you hear, hear this next statement. It is not disconsideration or laziness. It is not us not caring that keeps us from doing separate worship services for the older and the younger. It is on purpose, for very specific purposes, that we have intergenerational worship services all together. And Nick and I have had this discussion with the staff. We've had this discussion, but particularly my husband and I have been saying this for years, because we see only the other models where people are separated. And we've been saying, are we crazy? Because we don't feel like this is right. We feel like we're missing it here. And we don't hear it we didn't read it in books. We don't go to conferences with other pastors where they're talking about, yeah, for sure, mix your generations up. That's great. They're always saying, no, it might be necessary to separate them. And yet with us, we've been going, that doesn't feel like family. That doesn't feel right to us. But this week, I finally came across a study that verifies, that brings credibility to what we've already been feeling. And it comes from the best source that I could have ever imagined, from the Barna Group. And they have been studying culture and faith culture, where they intersect, for over 30 years, invested thousands and millions of dollars, I'm sure, into all these kind of studies. And the president of the Barna Group, David Kinnaman, spent 5 years studying why young people are running from church in droves. In fact, he wrote a book called You Lost Me. If you're interested in this, you could read that. But anyway, listen to the full impact. Take in the full impact of this study. I'm not going to read all the details. But he found that 6 in 10 young people will leave the church permanently or for an extended period of time, starting at age 15. Let that sink in. 6 out of 10 of our young people who have been in church. We're not even touching those who haven't come into the building. We're not even touching those that don't have any ties to a church. We're talking about kids who have grown up into our church, who have come and been a part of our youth. 6 out of 10 of them will walk out, maybe never coming back. And not just walking out of church, but likely walking away from their faith. 6 out of 10. If that doesn't make you want to throw up within your gut, I don't know what will. Because that makes me so angry. It makes me want to say, not on my watch. Those kids who are down and upstairs and up and downstairs at Grove Kids, 6 out of 10 of them. That's too many. I don't want any of them to walk away from Jesus Christ. And to some degree, we have had this in church for years, for decades. But even just a few years ago, when Nick and I were youth pastors, this is changing very rapidly, the age. I hope you understand that. Because it used to be that we could count on, after kids left the youth and they went off to college for a few years, they might go on a joyride and walk away from their faith for a little while. But they would, after they finished college and started families and things, they would return to church. Well, now the age span is becoming a huge gap. It's now 15, by the age of 15. And for people who don't get married anymore, largely our culture gets married very, very late or doesn't get married at all, we're just not seeing them come back. There is something so very wrong with that. And we as church leadership and we as a congregation, we bear responsibility on what we're going to do to figure that out. For your children, for your grandchildren, for our community, what are we going to do to figure that out so that kids are not leaving our church in droves, so that they don't want to walk away from faith in Jesus Christ? Kinnaman finds that people have responded in two extremes, which we kind of talked about, and he calls them both dangerous. One is that many churches have ignored the situation and just kind of leave students to figure it out on their own. We're going to keep on doing what we keep on doing the good old-fashioned way, and the kids will figure it out. It's not working. The other reaction is that we have congregations popping up where we are catering only to young people's needs, what they want, church the way they want it. And let me tell you, that is only a second chapter in the same book, right? Because if we have an older generation who are saying, we want church the way we want it, and we're not going to compromise, and then we're in reaction getting young people saying, we're going to do church the way we want it, and we're not going to compromise. It's almost like, the kids who go, I'm never going to be like my dad, and they become just like him. That's what we've got here. So he calls both of these reactions dangerous, and he prescribes this: intergenerational ministry. In many churches, this means changing the metaphor from simply passing the baton to the next generation to a more functioning biblical picture of a body. That is, the entire community of faith across the entire lifespan, working together to fill God's purposes. Yay! That's what I felt for years, and here we are. He's champion going, yes, intergenerational worship. That's what we need to do. So here we are. We're committed to intergenerational worship. And some of you, I know, are still either not sure about it because it means sacrificing a lot, and I get that. So let's dive into a little bit more. If I was going to give you some reasons as to why I've been convinced all these years, these are some of those reasons. I think that living together sharpens some of the hard edges off of us. There is an extreme and a cliche and a caricature of what it means. And there is a cliche and a caricature of what being young means. So I'm going to reference Bon Jovi, You Give Love a Bad Name here, and say, for some of us, we have I know, for those who were child of the 80s, you love that. Some of us have a tendency to give young a bad name, okay? If this is you, I'm telling you, you're giving young a bad name. Do you fail to open doors for your elders? Do you speak loudly and dart in front of people with frail bodies? Do you assume that people with feeble bodies have feeble minds? Do you look down your nose at their notions and ideas? Do you forget to use manners and respectful words? If so, you might be given young a bad name. Please, 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 I speak to you, my younger friends. I beg of you, be shockingly respectful. Be shockingly interested in the story of your elders. Be shockingly kind and considerate and helpful. That will give young a good name. Find out how you can assist one of our seniors here. Call the church. I have an extra Saturday. What can I do? Is there any seniors who need their driveway power washed? When you're walking into church and you're walking next to a senior, slow up your pace and talk to them. Hi, how are you? My name is, what's your name? Can I carry that for you? Begin the conversation of relationship. All right, so there you go. That was young. Now, you're giving old a bad name if. Do you glare and look scary and unapproachable? Because if so, you're scaring children. I'm just going to tell you right now. Have you forgotten what it is like to be young? Are you failing to look past the outside and into the heart? Is the only lesson you're teaching your kids and mine is, I never want to be like that guy? If so, please, 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 my older friend, smile a lot. Like smile making people think you're crazy smile. No, don't ever, ever, ever forget that the culture of today's families is unlike anything you've ever encountered. That our students, when they go to school, you would be shocked out of your seat if you knew the things that they encountered when they were at school. Never, ever, ever fail to give generous love and grace. If you see students with holes, great big giant holes in their ears and ink all over their arms and you don't like it, hold your tongue and smile. Smile is, do you see that? It's the cure for so many things. And think in your own heart, wow, those great big holes are sure going to look funny when they get old. But keep it to yourself. Please, I beg of you, do not offer wisdom that is cloaked in criticism, because it cannot be received. There is nothing so beautiful as a young person behaving in crazy, shocking, respectful, kind ways. And there is nothing so beautiful as an older person with a young, fun soul. All right, so that's one reason that I love the older and the younger being intergenerational in their worship. Another is we learn to sacrifice. Sacrificing is good for us. It makes us more like Christ. He sacrificed. And when we have to give up things we love, it's on our wall out there. We give up things we love for things we love even more. The church does not exist for us. We are the church, and we exist for the world. Sacrifice is good for us. Another reason is the older reminds us that we too will be old someday. And the younger reminds us that we too used to be young with big dreams. The corporate we can benefit from the balance of both wisdom and passion. We get the benefit of both. The Lord implores us all throughout Deuteronomy. He talks to Israel and he says, don't forget to tell your children about what I have done in your life. Don't forget to tell your children about my miracles. Don't forget to tell your children. It's throughout it, over and over and over and over. It's in the Psalms too. We cannot forget to tell our children. If there's nobody older, who's going to tell them? They don't hear it. We get benefit from the older, and the older get benefit from the younger. It's mutually beneficial. The last thing is we're family. Nick and I don't have parents around in the area. We don't have grandparents around in the area. When my kids come to church, you are their grandparents. And I love that picture of church. I love that we're family, that we can pick up the slack where some of our young people have no affection and no affirmation in their life. That we have, as a church, the ability to bridge that gap a little bit for them. I hope that for every older person, they don't walk out of this building without hugs every single Sunday. Okay, so the elephant in the room when we talk about sacrifice, and the elephant in the room when we talk about giving up our preferences, I know and you know, is music. And notice I say music and not worship, because it's music. We don't have a difference in philosophy that we should have worship within our services. We have a difference in the preference of the music style while we worship. My older friends, I know you love your hymns, and I happen to love them too. But young person, remember when we sing hymns, we are singing them because they have grounded the faith of people for hundreds of years. Including, you can look down the row and see a white-haired or a gray-haired person and know that those hymns have helped them make it through the difficult circumstances of their lives. And younger person, you love some drums and some electric guitar. And I do declare that I'm going to play the electric guitar in heaven because my arm is ready for it. Yes. You wish that we could play music even louder. I know that's shocking to you older people. But if we could, we would have it even louder. And there are earplugs at the back, at the sound booth, if you need earplugs. But we do not sing hymns to appease old people. We do it because it's good for the body. We do not have modern worship with modern instruments because we're trying to be cool and edgy. We do it because it's good for the whole of the body. And so many of you know that there's nothing sacred about any certain instrument. There's nothing sacred about any certain song. It is our response to a holy God as we worship. And the songs that we choose, Jamie and I have this conversation, that we choose songs that have some good theology in them and words that you can grab onto. So even if you do not like the instrumentation going on, whether the song was written 100 years ago or whether the song was written 2 days ago, you can grab a hold of those words and respond to your holy God. So whether you think it's too loud, too edgy, or sometimes you think, oh my goodness, that hymn is musically going nowhere. What we have is a compromise. It represents a compromise, and it's good for all of us. We are trying to balance that creativity and being relevant, but at the same time, honor tradition. It makes me so happy to see different generations worshiping together to songs that were written over hundreds of years. I think it is a healthy picture of the body of Christ and us as a family. Yes, it requires some sacrifice of how I might in a perfect world like things and how you might like things in a perfect world of worship. But it's 20 minutes a week. I can go home and crank whatever song I want on my iPod. Young person, you can go home and crank the songs that you can't even hardly hear melody on, however you want to do it. Older person, you can go home and put in your Bill Gaither, and you can turn it down as low as you want. Because it's not too loud. You didn't get that. That was a joke. But anyway. What we're doing is good, and it's right where it should be as far as I'm concerned. It's in the middle. It represents compromise. We're trying to honor tradition, but at the same time reach people. Did you know that hymns, many of them were rewritten bar tunes? They came out of the bars because they were so missional back 100 and some years ago. They were so missional that they wanted people to walk in from the bars into church and be able to recognize a tune that they could sing along to, hum along to, learn new words to. That's edgy. We're not doing anything like that. Can you imagine if we turned Lady Gaga into a worship song? Ma, save your space, ma, save your space. Right? That would be edgy. That would be crazy. I know, I just embarrassed my husband. Whether this is a difficult difficult subject for you and you're not sure about sacrificing your type, your preferences of worship, or whether you love this about our church that we have intergenerational worship, my prayer for you today is that you walk out of this place understanding why we do what we do. That it is not laziness, it's not thoughtlessness, it is on purpose for a very specific purpose. Because we think that this model where we share worship, where we share lives together, where we share in the mission of Jesus Christ, we think this is the healthiest picture of church.